7. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Maria Bartiromo, everybody. Yeah. Looking forward to having Maria Bartiromo on. Hey, Maria Bartiromo, great talking to you. How you doing?
I'm great. Good morning to you. Great to talk to you on a Monday. A little different than we normally do.
I know. Well, it's kind of even better that way to a certain degree because you're just fresh off Sunday Morning Futures and also fresh off this morning with Mornings with Maria. So we all know that you are full of info. What's the latest?
Well, today on the show, Mornings with Maria, I had on Kevin McCarthy, the obviously majority leader. And we pressed him on tax reform and on health care reform and why the Senate now says that they want to come up with their own bill after everything they all went through to get health care passed. Now the Senate says, well, we have our own bill. So it seems a little redundant, but he was pretty confident that all of the above will get done. So I'll tell you that much. He said, look, this is the legislative process. It's going to get done. The Senate has a bill that Collins and Cassidy are working on. In fact, I had Bill Cassidy on for the Morning Future Sunday. And, you know, they want smaller Medicaid, right? I mean, the House put together an expansion of the Medicaid plan, and the Senate wants it smaller. So we'll see how this bill gets marked up in the Senate. But now the work begins, and this is the regular process. We are going to see this law pass this year, and I do believe tax reform is also going to happen this year.
Oh, wow. So when you say this year, meaning like soon this year or?
Well, you know, the problem, Jamie, is they have to operate only through reconciliation.
Right.
Because the Democrats will not participate in any way, shape, or form in President Trump's agenda. So they're trying to obstruct everything. And because the Dems will not participate, they have to do everything that they're doing during so-called reconciliation when they only need 51 votes. So the 51 votes they're going to get for the health care package after the Senate marks it up. And then they're going to go for tax reform, and they're going to probably do that in the fall for the 2018 budget. So you are talking about later on in the year, probably October, is what I would guess.
Okay. So, again, I know this might seem a dumb question to people who are immersed in it, but what exactly is reconciliation?
Well, basically, there is a rule that Congress put in place a long time ago that allows you to get legislation passed and reconcile legislation with only 51 votes. If you stick to the promise that you will not add to the debt after 10 years. So there are rules associated with it. You can't add. That's why a lot of people say, well, maybe they'll do something with a revenue neutral in the tax bill. But you are able to do that, and with and sort of blow off the fact that you need 60 votes in the Senate. But you can do this with 51 votes during this period, during a budget reconciliation. And they only have a budget reconciliation 2 times a year because they're talking about the 2017 budget, which we just saw the spending bill pass to keep the government funded, and the 2018 budget reconciliation is in September. So that only happens twice a year, but they're trying to use that as a way to pass legislation because they can't have any Democrats participate. They won't participate. I mean, you hear Chuck Schumer calling the president's cabinet a swamp cabinet. You hear Nancy Pelosi saying, vote no on this bill. You see Elizabeth Warren saying everybody's going to die. So they're basically pushing back. It's as if the Democrats do not understand what happened on November 8th, 2016. The voters voted to get business done, to get these big legislative priorities accomplished. And the Democrats, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's Neil Gorsuch, who they all were in love with a few years ago, they are obstructing. They are saying no, we are voting no, just so that President Trump's agenda does not go anywhere. And that's why they have to use reconciliation. So reconciliation is just a structure of how to pass legislation during the budget battle.
Right.
Because that will require only 51 votes versus 60.
Okay. Now, on to the Senate version of the new health care bill. How is this going to go, do you think, based on who you've been talking to, in terms of what's going to happen with this? And I know that they can't afford to even lose 2 votes, correct?
That's right, because you need 51. And that's the whole point. They're lucky they can get this done with 51. Because normally you need 60. But, basically what's happening is Bill Cassidy and Susan Collins, They have been working on their own bill. They're calling it the Patient Act. And it's smaller government. It's not as large an expansion as of Medicaid that the Republicans in the House did. So they want less government. They want a smaller Medicaid government reach. And they want, obviously, costs down. Now, the Republicans, it's really surrounding pre-existing conditions. The Republicans feel that what they did to make a change in the health care bill last week, they take the people who are very sick, those with so-called pre-existing conditions, take them out of the pool of, the population, put them in their own pool, and give the states an opportunity to expand coverage for those people. In the meantime, what did you just do to the population of people without those sick people? You just sent costs down because you took out the really sick people and you put them into their own category, and that and gave the states an opportunity to insure those people. And so, yes, pre-existing conditions are covered, but it's in its own category versus the rest of the population, so that you can actually have a clear picture of what the costs are. Now, I had a guy on today, Dr. Craig Venter. Jamie, I had an incredible interview with Dr. Craig Venter today. He is the guy who 20 years ago mapped the human genome. And because he mapped the genome, we learned so much. He generated all this data because he maps the genome. He's got all this data. So over the last 20 years, we all learned why we're not supposed to smoke. It leads to cancer.
Right.
We all learned why we're supposed to have a healthy diet, because if we don't, it leads to heart disease. And heart disease and cancer are the two big killers in the country. And so he comes on the show. He's out with a new company. It's called Human Longevity. And he says he is cheating death. His words, not mine, because he is coming up with preventive medicine. He said, he's got this test. It's $25,000 for physical. Then he's got a cheaper one for $7,000. Doesn't include all the bells and whistles. But basically, he maps your genome and tells you what you need in terms of preventive medicine. He said 1 in 40 people that he did the test on had cancer and they didn't even know it. So that's why he's cheating death. So basically, he says we all have pre-existing conditions. We just don't know it. And so we had a little bit of a debate about pre-existing conditions on the set today, but it was so interesting to have Dr. Craig Venter, who mapped the genome, who's now doing this testing that he's cheating death, sitting there with Kevin McCarthy, the majority leader in the House, to talk about sort of policy. It was really fascinating.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. So, yeah. A lot of people always have these gimmicky type of approaches, but you think this guy's pretty right on.
Oh, Dr. Craig Venter? Oh, no, he's definitely right on. Another thing that we learned all that stuff about heart disease and about cancer. What we didn't learn, but now he's learning a lot now because of the most recent genome mappings that he's done, he's learning about the brain. For a long time, we didn't really know anything about the brain. We don't know. That's what we don't have a cure for Alzheimer's. We don't have cures for autism. All of these things, these brain illnesses, we're learning much more about. And I think the next 20 years are going to be years focused on the brain. And I think we will see preventive medicines for Alzheimer's and autism. We are at an incredible moment in time right now because we're on the cusp of tremendous innovation as it relates to sickness.
Wow. That's really something else. I mean, again, we look at these things and we look at these vexing kind of afflictions, and you talk about Alzheimer's and even diabetes for that matter, and you're thinking, wow, if we see some big breakthroughs there, that we're on our way.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, diabetes, there have been breakthroughs. I mean, heart disease. Yeah. There are preventive measures that now people do. Even you just look at the statins that people take, or, right, cholesterol drugs. I mean, there are certain things that have really changed the dynamics of heart disease. I'm hoping that we get those kinds of dynamics as it relates to the brain as well.
Well, and in the meantime, with the preventive ways of going about things, you wind up with a whole lot of people who aren't sick, and you talk about taxing the healthcare industry and the healthcare world. I mean, that's what we're having a lot of people who, haven't been able to prevent this, and so they're part of the many millions we're all debating about right now in terms of covering.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And so, the healthcare bill, I think, will probably get marked up. It will change. It will look different once it's passed, but It is going to happen. I mean, I think that the Republicans understand they have this small window of opportunity. And if they don't get something done in 2017, they're going to lose seats badly in 2018, and they know that.
I agree. And in the end, though, there's also this quotient that, Democrats ought to be hoping. In an odd way, I feel Democrats ought to be hoping there's a change here, because otherwise, if Obamacare just goes into 2018 exploding and ripping apart like a truck tire the way it looks like it's doing right now, that'll hurt the Democrats.
Well, did you see President Obama talking last night in Boston? He's coming out and he's saying, look, Republicans, everybody in Congress needs to have courage, push back on repealing and replacing Obamacare, with no mention whatsoever of the fact that Obamacare is imploding right now.
Right.
I mean, look at what happened in Iowa. 94 out of 99 counties are without health care. 94 out of 99 counties.
Right.
Look at Virginia. Anthem and Aetna just pulled out. They're no longer providing insurance in Virginia. I mean, you see everywhere you look, you see these Obamacare exchanges failing. And
Yeah.
yet the president comes out last night and he tells everybody, have courage. Well, no mention whatsoever of the elephant in the room that this legislation has failed and it's imploding and something needs to be done. What am I having courage about?
Well, because he received that Profiles in Courage award, I think he figured his speech had to just use the word courage in it, 100 times, and he'd be fine. So that's probably where he got it.
Okay, you're right. That's what it was about. Okay.
Right. So anything that he was saying had to have courage in it. So that's must have been his reasons. Okay, so tomorrow morning, obviously you might not be set up already. So what are we looking at tomorrow morning on Mornings with Maria?
Tomorrow morning, we're going to have more of the same. We're going to talk about the president's agenda. Mornings with Maria is Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And I got to tell you, Jamie, we have the smartest guests. I just love this show. I don't mind getting up at 3:45. That I get up every morning at 3:45. But tomorrow I've got Andy Posner coming on. He's the former CKE restaurant CEO. He's almost a labor secretary. I've got John Ashcroft coming on tomorrow. So we're going to talk about what's going on in terms of the intelligence community. Obviously, former AG under President Bush. Also, we've got General Jack Keane coming on, and Representative Sean Duffy, as well as John Hilsenrath, the economics correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. So we got a big show already planned for tomorrow.
I was a little surprised that Andy Posner dropped out. That was kind of I didn't feel like he needed to, but I guess he did, huh?
I guess he just got sick and tired of all of the attacks. I mean, the Democrats have been really obstructing any way they can. And, now they've taken their ire to some of the president's assistants and counselors like Sebastian Gorka. But anybody they could try to take down and attack, they feel that's victory.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that'll be interesting to watch. And as always, when you talk about getting up in the morning and having great guests, that's what I do too. And that's what you are to me. So, Maria Bartiromo, thank you so much as always.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate it so much. And by the way, that's the Fox Business Network.
Yes.
It's a different channel than Fox News Channel.
Of course. We'll be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
All
Have a great day.
You too, at Maria Bartiromo.